All right, so the ultimate guide for OKRs. I'm actually revising this video primarily because the last time that I published the video, for those of you who may not have seen it, the lighting was extremely poor, and I really struggled overall with regards to the quality of that video. And so with that, I've decided that I would actually come back and put this together again with getting started with OKRs. So we're going to cover a couple of key topics today with regards to OKRs. The first of which will be that we will talk about what are OKRs overall. So what specifically are they? We'll also talk about how do you establish them inside of a company? How do you make them, part of the culture and things like that? Where to start and when to start as well will be, something else that we'll cover. And then I also have built a couple of bonuses that I actually will save for the very end. So for those of you who stick around until the very end, you will actually get the bonuses as well. So why don't we jump right in? So first of all, what are OKRs? OKRs stand for objectives and key results. The idea is that you would have objectives or things that you're trying to achieve, and then also key results that support hitting those objectives. So what sort of things do you need to do to be able to hit those specific objectives as well? They were popularized by John Doerr he was a venture capitalist for Google. And he brought them in primarily because when he was working with somebody at I believe, Motorola, they actually established them there. And he felt like it was a good system for making sure that companies hit their goals by outlining the specific steps that will deliver on the goals that are underway as well. They're designed to be flexible and adaptable. They really also can be used at any stage of growth with a company. So they can, come in whether you're a small size company, a medium sized company, a large size company. It doesn't really matter. How you implement them probably very much matters, but the size of the company and the functionality of OKRs really can be applied, across any size organization. I think Google is a good example. There are several other companies that are also using OKRs today that are larger corporations as well, that you can research too. But I mean, the reality is whether you're small or you're medium size, it doesn't really matter. I've worked with, small and medium sized companies and have actually helped them establish them and get started with regards to getting going with OKRs. And so, realistically, it will work at any size company as well. They're designed to be transparent. So what does this mean? The transparency realistically is up to the leadership of the company, but the reality is these are meant to be out in the public and they're meant to be known across the company. I guess I should clarify as well. So out in the public inside of your company, not necessarily out in the public eye for everybody to see, but they are meant for companies more or less to post them up and have them available for individuals inside the organization to, really understand exactly how you're performing against your OKRs, regardless of what department you're in. You would be able to sort of reflect on the performance of other departments and hopefully help them along with their OKRs as well. If you're somebody that either feeds into or accepts the downstream flow from a particular part of the organization. So realistically, they're meant to be transparent from that standpoint so that you can collaborate across the organization to more or less make sure that they happen as well. With regards to establishing them, it all starts with looking at the vision of the company. And I oftentimes come back to this because I've been in organizations before where they kind of want to start in the middle, more or less, and focus on things that they know are important with regards to the organization. But the key question is, does this feed to the vision of the organization? Yes or no? And if not, then realistically, why are you working on it? Or why does it, why isn't this a part of the vision for the organization as well? So if the strategic vision for the company should align to the initial establishment of the OKRs themselves. What are the things that people have to really do then to make the vision a reality is another key question that needs to happen. So, or needs to be asked. So, what overall has to happen so that the vision will become a reality inside of the organization? Those become your initial, let's say, O's or objectives inside of the organization. And then the KRs are what are the supporting steps or the supporting things that have to kind of fall into place to make the longer term vision a reality. So first of all, objectives are meant to be significant, concrete, and inspirational. So they're meant overall to establish that sort of significant vision out into the future. The key results then are specific and time bound, actionable, realistic, and measurable. They're the things that you're actually going to go execute on and then measure against. And then I brought this up, all at once so that you could see as well that the measurements very much are a part of the overall process, so that you have, some form of metric as to whether or not if you're progressing or not. And it is important that you're able to establish whether or not if progress is happening against OKRs. I have a lot of people that say, well, there's something that's going to be done the last day of the quarter. And so, you can't really see it until the last day of the quarter. But my key question back then is, what are the supporting tasks or activities that have to happen in between now and the end of the quarter for us to know whether or not if this activity is going to happen? It's not like, normally magic just happens that last day of the quarter and all of a sudden something happens. Realistically, there are steps normally inside of anything, even if it's a binary sort of, will I make it or not kind of measurement. That key question really here is, what are those other underlying activities that we can see and sort of know that we're making progress towards this key result or not? So setting OKRs really becomes a step-by-step process. So the first part is you're going to look at your vision and then you're going to define your objectives. So that's kind of the very first part of this, the steps that need to happen to be able to support building OKRs. The next part is you're going to identify those key results that need to happen inside the organization so that, again, you can determine whether or not if specific action is being taken, towards the objective that is out there or not. And then lastly, you're going to set a time frame and a review period. So first of all, time frames overall oftentimes are within the quarter. So objectives and key results are normally set within a quarter period. And then in addition to that, you are going to have a review period. And my suggestion would be for most organization that is on a weekly basis. And so on a weekly basis, the leadership team or the individuals that have OKRs are going to get together and meet. They're going to review performance and whether or not if you're on track with your objectives and key results or not. And if not, are there things that could be done to support the individuals that maybe they're not on track at a specific point in time? Lastly, you're going to define the measurements of success. So here you're going to define the overall outcomes or outputs of the specific things you're going to work on with regards to your objectives and key results. In terms of starting, John Doerr in his book, Measure What Matters, talks about a process for establishing OKRs around a quarter period. So 4 to 6 weeks before a quarter, the leadership team is going to get together and brainstorm OKRs. then you're going to take those and map out for especially key functions. And the reason why I would say key functions here is that because if you're starting with an organization that doesn't have OKRs today, you really want to start with marketing, operations, and probably finance as key functions inside the organization where you're going to focus first. It'd be nice to do a rollout across the entire organization. I just haven't seen it in my time working with organizations. Oftentimes we try and focus on a narrow band of parts of the organization to try and get them implemented first, and then we can sort of broaden the reach from there. And so my suggestion would be start with marketing, operations, and finance to get going. And then 2 weeks before the start of the quarter, you're going to go out and communicate what's happening, that you're establishing an OKR process, and that you're going to sort of talk about the initial round of OKRs that these key departments are going to have, so that, again, they are transparent for the organization. And then, frequently you're going to come back again, probably on a monthly basis, whenever you have organizational meetings, and communicate the metrics again and the performance with regards to the OKRs at that point in time, so that, again, they stay relevant and transparent to the remainder of the organization. And then 1 week after the start of a quarter, so this is if you're deploying OKRs across your organization, what you would do then is you would have all of the other individuals that will have OKRs build their OKRs and then come back and review them with their leader. This isn't normally a top-down procedure. I mean, there's a lot of discussion if you view it online where the top level sort of passes them down. This is actually a little bit of the opposite, where you have individuals that are establishing OKRs that then support where the organization is heading. And so if again, their OKRs support the vision, then, at the end of the day, it will help to deliver for the company in terms of overall performance to their goals. So then throughout the quarter, you're going to hold regular check-ins. And again, I suggest it every week. So, you're doing regular check-ins with regards to the OKRs, and then maybe company level performance about once a month. So in that way, everybody gets to see everybody else's. But then you have focus sessions in terms of departments, as well as the executive leadership team, where you're reviewing what the overall performance is in OKRs and exactly what you need to do to possibly course correct if there's any sort of problem. And in most organizations, there tend to be opportunities for, sort of refocusing or improving, as you go along. And it's just a natural part of the process. And so what I would say is that these reviews are really critical, especially to open up conversations about what specifically is happening with OKRs. And then at the end of the quarter, hopefully you're celebrating a lot, all of the OKRs that were achieved during that specific quarter. And just, all of the overall performance that has been achieved within that specific quarter, all matching towards the company goals. So the first bonus that I have for you are common pitfalls. What I've seen with a lot of organizations is that they spend a lot of time just talking about it, talking about implementing OKRs, the impact of, what if, so-and-so here's in a specific department that you're deploying them, how critical people are going to be over deploying OKRs. It can be a challenge for sure. And it is something that has to be managed from a communication perspective, and people need to follow up where there are questions inside the organization. But don't let inaction happen due to it not being perfect at the point of getting ready to roll them out. I've seen entire leadership teams say, hey, look, I don't feel like we're ready for this because we don't feel like our teams will receive it. Well, then the reality is, if you started to communicate even with some of the key individuals inside of your organization, you just might find out that some people might get excited by the fact that there will be measurements in terms of, what specifically you're trying to achieve versus trying to achieve everything without any measurements being in place. Up next, having too many objectives. So having too many objectives is an easy thing to do. Like I said, you should focus in on 3 departments or so to get started. I mean, I mentioned already my thoughts in terms of this. It'd be pretty easy to go through the marketing OKRs, the operations OKRs, and the finance OKRs for the organization. Most likely those items are already transparent for most of the organization anyway. And so sitting down and writing these out for those 3 key functions would be a great place to start. But also make sure that whenever you develop OKRs for those functions, that you don't have, 10 or 12 or whatever OKRs for the group, because in reality, having way too many things to focus on just isn't possible for most organizations, especially if you're a small or medium-sized organization. You're not going to handle having a bunch of OKRs within a specific department very easily anyway. And so start small, have 2 or 3 OKRs per department. That'll give you anywhere between 6 and 9 OKRs total for the quarter, which honestly for most organizations would be plenty. Up next would be having too many key results, the same exact thing. So now you have your objectives, your high level objectives, and then normally under the key results, you have a couple of tasks normally that have to get done under each one of those objectives. If you have too many, again, where do you focus to make sure that critical things get done? I would say at the very least, the leaders of each one of the key functions where you're rolling this out should be taking a look at trying to decide which are the critical path items or the critical items that we have to get done in the quarter, and identify those especially to get started with. Punishing people for lack of performance. So I've seen organizations get started with this, and they set extremely lofty objectives to try and achieve. And then at the end of the quarter, as you start to close the quarter out, you normally find that there are some objectives that aren't going to be met. And the organizations that come along and punish people, now this punishment could happen in a lot of different ways. It could be public shaming, or it could even be, just coming back and saying to people, hey, we are letting so-and-so go because they didn't meet their OKRs. This will cause a really bad thing to happen inside of your organization. The first thing that can happen from this would be that people pad their OKRs now. So now all of a sudden, instead of giving you a realistic, aggressive target for something that's a lofty goal, I instead am going to back off a little bit and try and provide myself a little padding with regards to achieving the objective or the key results that need to be accomplished within the quarter. So all of these things then lead to a lack of transparency. This is all counter to the culture that you want to have with OKRs. And so the reality is you can do deep dive meetings to try and understand exactly what happened. Why wasn't there certain follow-up that happened along the specific task that needed to be done? Or maybe it wasn't transparent all the way along and you want more transparency. All of those things would be fine. However, what you do not want to do is to punish people as you're implementing OKRs, because it will essentially stop your progress, and it will have an unwanted effect in your organization. Developing OKRs that don't support the strategic direction of the organization. This is exactly where I started, that you want to have OKRs that point to that vision, the place that the organization is heading, primarily because it will tie everything together. And so you want to make sure that you really do focus in on here. So the last bonus for you is I've created an OKR mini course. It starts with having the ultimate guide for OKRs. So I created a guide for you that will help you overall sort of understand each one of these steps in a little bit further depth. In addition to that, you will get 5 days worth of messaging from me along with some additional bonuses, worksheets, and other things that will help you implement OKRs as well. And so you can get to the mini course two different ways. One way would be to follow the link under this video. And the second way would be to go to my consulting website, which is 5280 Life Science Consulting LSC.com. And so 5280 LSC will have a button on it that will lead you back to this mini course. You can take it there. And then at the very end, we sort of wrap up even with, some final items and final thoughts that you might have with regards to implementing OKRs. I go in a lot more depth than what I would say here on the video. And so I'd encourage you to go and download the workbook as well as the rest of the materials that I have for you in the mini course. So with that, hopefully you like this video and will subscribe. And I greatly appreciate you being here. Thanks so much.